Once upon a time, in a quiet little cottage on the edge of the woods, an old woman baked something strange. She wasn't sure why her hands moved the way they did that day. Possibly the spices she used were more bitter than usual, or the molasses was darker than tar, or maybe a pinch of something unknowable. The kitchen was filled with the rich, heavy scent of cinnamon, clove, and molasses. The old woman hummed softly as she worked, her hands dusted with flour, her apron stained from years of sweet experiments. This dough felt strange beneath her finger, too warm and too pliable, as though it had a will of its own. She had been using the recipe that had been passed down for generations, but today, something different had happened. When the oven door opened, a wave of hot cookie air whooshed out. Inside stood something impossible. A gingerbread man perfectly formed. Eyes like molten sugar, icing lined his body, and a grin that twisted just a little too wide. The old woman stepped forward, trembling. "Why, you're alive." He stretched his arms and cracked his neck with a brittle snap. "I am," he said, "and you shouldn't have made me if you weren't ready to feed me." Before she could scream, he launched off the tray and sprinted under the kitchen racks. The woman ran after him, breathless, shouting loud enough that her voice echoed between the pots and pans. "Come back. You're mine." The gingerbread man laughed as he jumped onto the edge of the hearth. She clutched the edge of the table. "You're not supposed to talk," she whispered. "You're not supposed to move." The gingerbread man's grin stretched wider. His gumdrop eyes glowed. "You made me," he said, "and now I'll remake you." He took a step forward. The wooden floor creaked under his body. She stepped back, stumbling into the rolling pin she'd left on the counter. "Please," she whispered, "I gave you life. And now," he said, opening his arms wide, "you'll feed it." His mouth used to be just a simple icing smile, but began to split down the sides with the icing peeled open like over-dried fondant. And behind it was a second mouth more sinister and scarier than the first mouth. Peppermint gums stretched open, lined with moist, sticky folds of ginger dough and rows of glowing sugar crystal nubs shaped like teeth. The old woman covered her mouth as the heat poured out of him. "No," she whispered. "No, you're a cookie." "I was," he said. "Now I'm a hungry cookie." He lunged. She tried to run, but his arms were elastic and pliable still from the heat. He wrapped his arms around her waist and lifted her off the ground. "Wait, wait," she shrieked. "I can make more like you. I can." But the gingerbread man didn't want more like him. He wanted her. He tilted her upward, and her feet dangled above his head. His candy jaws opened wide. He lowered her head toward his face. Her hair burned and curled from the heat as her head slipped past the threshold of his candied mouth, slowly, like sinking into warm, sticky, uncooked dough. His throat opened eagerly. Glurk, schlurk. Her shoulders folded inward from the pressure of his throat. Her arms were pinned at her sides, so she tried to kick, but it was like kicking into bread pudding. The further she slid in, the tighter it got. It was hot, aromatic, and almost womb-like in its sweetness. Inside him, the peppermint spiral tunnel spiraled her deeper inside of his sweet gingerbread body. His muscles that were not muscle, but some strange baked approximation of it, started secreting ginger-scented saliva fluid. It was thick, honeyed syrup that clung to her skin and hair, soaking her entire body with stickiness. She screamed one last time before her hips vanished into his mouth. Gulp. Her legs curled into the tunnel, frosting walls brushing against her skin until her feet disappeared into the void of his mouth. The gingerbread man stood with a bulge that moved slowly down his chest, then his round belly stretched slightly. Inside, the old woman landed with a splash in the syrupy stomach chamber. The warmth from a hot, sticky bath engulfed her immediately. She coughed, trying to push herself up. The syrup rose around her, thick with cinnamon and heat. "Let me out," she cried. "Let me." The syrup flooded her mouth. Her voice became muffled, and the gingerbread man sighed, rubbing his belly with a sticky, satisfied hand. "You taught me to rise," he said. "Now I'll rise above you." The gingerbread man spies the door to freedom and kicks the barricade open with his mighty foot. He starts running into the orchard. Down the road, a farmer sees the spectacle of this tiny, fast-moving cookie. He too decided to join in on this chase out of sheer curiosity and hunger. The gingerbread man paused near a rock, noticing he was being chased. His body was still warm and steaming from the oven's touch, and his frosting was just now hardening under the sun. "You think you can catch me?" he said with a crackle in his tone. "I'm the gingerbread man, and I'm hungry too." The icing split along his jawline as he grinned wide again. The farmer froze in place despite the blazing hot sun. "What in God's name?" The gingerbread man lunged. He was small, but his body expanded mid-leap, arms stretching like syrup, swelling with heat and size. The farmer tried to run, but a sticky hand wrapped around his chest, dragging him into the air. Slurp. With one monstrous motion, the gingerbread man opened his gaping candy mouth wide and swallowed the farmer whole. His body slid in head first, the legs kicking wildly, but the gingerbread throat was baked strong. Inside, it was warm just like a baked cookie fresh out of the oven. The peppermint tunnel was filled with cinnamon-scented fluid sloshing at the bottom of the gingerbread stomach as the farmer fell into it with a splash. He gasped, shocked to find he could breathe. The air was thick with the smell of ginger. But he wasn't alone. He saw something in the shadows, curled in the syrup. "I was the baker," the woman whispered faintly. "He swallowed me first." As the gingerbread man kept running, he grew. Not tall, but fuller. Broader shoulders, firmer legs. His gumdrop buttons turned to hardened cherry glaze, and his icing thickened into veins of white sugar. He passed a meadow. A cow grazing there blinked and mooed in surprise as he dashed past. Then she too started to chase the gingerbread man. But the gingerbread man didn't run. He stopped and waited. When the cow caught up to the gingerbread man, he spun and let out a burst of heated breath. The cow staggered. "You're next," the gingerbread man said excitedly. He opened his mouth again. The cow lowed in fear, trying to back away, but was too late. A long, sticky tongue of syrup wrapped around its neck. Glurp. The swallow was slower this time. The cow's bulk made the peppermint tunnel stretch and flex more. But eventually, she too landed into the splash of sticky stomach goo. The farmer and the old woman stared as the cow's body splashed them both. "It's warm," she murmured. The gingerbread man's voice echoed from the walls. "You'll keep me warm. You'll sweeten my story." By the time the gingerbread man reached the riverbank, he was no longer small. His once palm-sized body had grown thick with stolen warmth. His limbs were heavy with caramel muscle now. The river shimmered before him. Mist rose off it in soft swirls. The poor gingerbread man made it this far, yet could not swim. His body would dissolve, or so he thought. From the reeds stepped a beautiful, sleek, and red fox with golden eyes staring at the strange creature on the shore. "Well, well," the fox said smoothly, "aren't you a curious treat?" The gingerbread man cocked his head, his peppermint grin stretching. "You're not going to chase me." "I'm smarter than the others," the fox said, flicking his tail. "And I'm hungry enough to wait. You can't cross the river. You'll need help." The gingerbread man looked at the water hesitantly. It steamed as he stepped close. "And you'll carry me?" he asked, voice tight with heat. "Of course," said the fox, "but only if you promise not to melt." The gingerbread man smiled. "I don't melt." The fox crouched, and the gingerbread man climbed onto his back. As the fox swam out, the gingerbread man sat with all his weight. Midway across, the fox began to sweat. "You're heavier than you look," he panted. "I grow," said the gingerbread man, "with each bite I take." The fox narrowed his eyes. "You haven't eaten me yet." "Not yet," the gingerbread man agreed as they approached the opposite side of the river. Suddenly, his arms shot out like long, sticky ropes of gingerbread and icing. They wrapped around the fox's head and jaws. The fox screamed, but the gingerbread man opened his mouth wide with his jaw unhinged. The fox kicked in the water, but the gingerbread man dragged his snout toward the gaping maw. Inch by inch, the fox's head slipped inside. His eyes rolled back. Glurk, schlork. With a slurp that echoed across the river, the fox vanished down the gingerbread man's throat. The fox dropped into the churning pit of the stomach as the farmer, the cow, the old woman watched. But the fox thought he was clever and could resist. But he too landed hard, skidding across molten sugar tiles. "What is this place?" he gasped. The gingerbread man's voice answered from all sides. "My stomach, my oven, my soul." Then the digestion began. The gingerbread man was finally full. The fox's paws started to burn. The heat curled his fur. He screamed as his body began to melt into rich caramel-colored liquid. His tail puffed into ginger smoke. "No, no, I'm too clever for this." "You thought you were," came a reply. "But I'm cleverer still. I was baked with vengeance." The fox clawed at the walls as his limbs turned to sweet pulp. Inside the gingerbread man, things were changing. The cow moaned softly into the dark, syrup-slick tunnels of his body. The farmer clung to a dissolving ledge of sticky caramel. The old woman whispered prayers as sugar biles surrounded her. The fox had gone silent. His eyes had melted first, then his tongue was getting digested before he lost all consciousness. His body eventually absorbed into the warm, bubbling dough of the gingerbread man's inner sanctum. The digestion kept going. Bones dissolved like sugar cubes in hot tea. Organs melted into cinnamon paste. Outside, the gingerbread man stopped on a hill and clutched his swollen tummy. His belly was stretched so taut. A strange, tickling pressure was building there, right behind his navel. His frosting belly button, once a tiny swirl, was now beginning to bulge. With a sudden shudder, his body convulsed. A warm, viscous substance pushed outward through his navel. It spiraled out in ribbons. Thick, creamy frosting, striped with colors like the bodies his stomach once held. From within him, they came out. Not as bodies anymore, but as frosting. Thick, creamy, yummy, tasty frosting, just like how Grandma would make. The cow's body was rich and velvety. It emerged in waves of white vanilla, curling onto the floor across the grass. The farmer came next. He was dense, earthy chocolate frosting with a hint of salt. His body too swirled around into a pile on the grass, mixing with the cow's white vanilla flavor. The old woman flowed out slow and steady. Her body came out as ginger cream with a bittersweet aftertaste reminiscent of the scent of an elderly person on medication. And the fox came last but not least. His body produced a sharp, blood-orange glaze that shimmered with a hint of fire sparkles. Each stream curled from his navel like a grotesque birth, oozing in perfect, delicious swirls. The gingerbread man groaned softly in orgasmic satisfaction. The process was complete. They were no longer within him. They were transmuted. The gingerbread man became the baker. When the last ribbon of frosting dripped from his belly button and hardened in the cool air, he licked a finger, dipped it into the frosting on his belly, and tasted it. "Perfect," he said aloud. He turned to the horizon. "Run, run, as fast as you can," he whispered. "I've caught you all. I'm the gingerbread man."